Alright, before you start working, you want to think, do I have a calculator, a pencil, and potentially one or two highlighters? So I'm going to go through these solutions and then ask you some questions along the way. So in the first one, angle Z, or ray ZY bisects angle XZR, and angle XZR, which is this guy, is 122 degrees. So I would label that as 122 degrees. The question wants to know what's the measure of angle YZP. So angle YZP is that blue angle. So the first thing we have to remember is that an angle bisector splits the angle in half. So you'd have to figure out 122 divided by 2 is 61. So each part of angle XZR is 61 degrees, and now when you go to find the measure of angle YZP, you have to do 61 plus 95 to get 156, and when you write your answer, it's best to write it as the measure of angle YZP equals 156 degrees. Okay? Alright, number 2, if B is the midpoint of segment AC, so I'm going to draw segment AC. Does not have to be drawn to any scale, but we should do our best. So here segment AC has 2 endpoints, and B is the midpoint, and then I'm just going to label what I know. 5x plus 4 equals 3x plus 6. And the question wants to know what is AC. So AC is a length, a whole length. But because we have this midpoint, we know that A to B is the same distance as B to C. So 5x plus 4 equals 3x plus 6. And now we're going to solve for x, minus 3x, minus 3x. 4 equals, or 2x plus 4 equals 6. Subtract 4, subtract 4. 2x equals 2, so x equals 1. But we can't stop there because we know the question wants to find the length of AC. So we have to take our x, substitute it in. Okay, so that distance would be 9, and just double check that you get the same distance. So this would also be 9. So AC is 9 plus 9, which is 18. So we should be writing our answer as the length of AC is 18. Okay? Alright, number 3. 3 distinct points on a lumber line with D located at -9. So let's draw a line. And if it's a line, it should have arrows. And the only thing we know is that D is at -9. Okay? We know the distance between D and E is 15. We know the distance between DF is 3/4 as long as DE, and the question wants to know where is F located. So the first thing we need to find out is how far away D and F are. So if DE is 15, DF is 3/4 of 15, so that's the ratio distance. So then the distance between D and F is 11 and 25/100. So notice that's a distance, and our question wants a location. So then it doesn't say where F has to be. It doesn't say it has to be between anything. So we could be to the right or to the left. Remember, when you move to the right, you add. When you move to the left, you subtract. So we're going to do -9 because it's from D plus 11 and 25/100, which that gets us to 2 and 25/100ths, or we do -9 minus 11 and 25/100ths equals -20 and 25/100ths. So then our answer is F could be, they're both our answers. Okay. Okie dokie. All right, moving on to number 4. First thing you want to do with a picture like this is take your given information and label it. We also know that lines L and M are parallel. So we know corresponding angles, I'm going to abbreviate, are equal. Okay, so let's take what we know. 8x minus 9 is the measure of angle 2, and the measure of angle 6 is 3x plus 6. So, because our lines are parallel, our corresponding angles are equal. Angles 2 and angle 6 are corresponding, so they're equal. Okay, if you solve this, we get to 5x equals 15, so x is 3. And hopefully you've noticed that the question says, what's the measure of angle 8? Well, the measure of angle 8 is the same as angle 6 because they are vertical. So now we have to do 3 times 3 plus 6, which I believe is 15. So the measure of angle 6 is 15 degrees, therefore the measure of angle 8 is 15 degrees because it's vertical. Okay. Next page. All right, in the figure at the right, angle AOD is a right angle, so we know it's 90 degrees. You need to put this down. Okay. And we know that the measure of arc AB and the measure of arc CD, they should be telling us that they're equal. Okay. So maybe add that in. So the measure of those two arcs are equal. So arc AB is the same as arc CD. So it looks like that arc is 12 and 6/10. 12 and 6/10. And then the question wants, what's the measure of arc BC? So we know the whole thing added together should get us to that 90-degree angle, which is right here. Okay, so let's add up what we know. And that gets us to 25 and 2/10, and then take that from 90, because this part plus that part has to be 90. Okay, so then the measure of arc BC is 64 and 8/10 degrees. Okay. Moving down to number 6, what is the slope of the line containing the points 5, 11, and 3, 7? So here's your slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so whatever you choose, I would choose x1, y1 as 5, 11, x2, y2 as 3, 7. So then you're going to do 7 minus 11 over 3 minus 5. This becomes -4 over -2. So our given slope is 2. So any line perpendicular to it has to be the opposite reciprocal. So it has to be opposite. So now if this is positive, this has to be negative, and you flip your fraction. So it would be -1/2. And then any line parallel to that, the slope would be the same as it, so that would be 2. Okay? 7, read the statement below. If AB equals CD and CD equals RM, then AB equals RM. So you want to think about what you start with. So here's our starting point, and then what happens at the then part. So it looks like something's repeated, the CD is repeated, and then it's taken out. So you also first want to recognize that we have equal signs. So this is going to be something of equality. And this would actually be the transitive property of equality. Okay? Moving down to number 8. For the figures below, classify by the number of sides and then state if it's convex or non-convex. So you want to count the sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is a hexagon, and this is convex because if you were to take a line or a segment and draw it from one corner, oops, I don't want to draw actual. If you were to draw it from one point to one point, it would stay inside our actual figure. Okay, unlike if we came over here and we drew a point to a point, we would go outside of the figure. So this is non-convex. And I believe it has 7 sides, so it's a heptagon. You should know from sides 3 up to 10. All right, number 9, A, B, C, D lie on a number line in alphabetical order from left to right. Notice they don't give you a picture, so let's draw one. I'm going to make this. Okay, so it doesn't matter where you put them. A, B, C, D, as long as they do have to be in alphabetical order. Okay, so A is at -6 2/10. D is at 5. The distance from A to B is 3. And the distance from C to D is 1.5. We want to know what is the distance from B to C. Okay, so I'm going to go through 2 ways you could do this. You could find the location of B, knowing that it's to the right 3 units from -6 2/10. So that means B is at -3 2/10. And then D and C are 1.5 units away, and C is to the left of D. So C is at 3.5. So therefore, if you do absolute value of -3 2/10 minus 3.5, you should be getting 6 7/10. So what that means is the distance between 6 and 7/10 is the distance between B and C. Okay? Or you could do it like this. You know that whole distance would be from A to D. That would be the absolute value of 6 2/10 minus 5. So the whole distance would be 11 7/10. Okay? And we have 3 parts that would make up 3, 1.5. So add those parts together. 4.5. And then you're going to subtract. So you're going to take this part and that part out, and you subtract and get 6 7/10. Either way you do it correctly, and you'll get the same answer. Okay? Alright, number 10, we definitely don't want to get wrong on the test. You're looking at a line, and you're going to name it 3 ways. First way, just with the lowercase letter K. Then you could use XY, but you must have the symbol for the line above it. You could use XZ with the symbol above it, and you could use YZ. Okay? If you want to make a note of some things you can't use, you can't just use X and Y, because that means the distance. You can't use X and Y, anything with just a segment symbol, and you can't use 3 letters. So I would, if you need to make a note that those do not work. Moving on to number 11, you have another picture. They're giving you information, so let's label it. So 7x and 2x plus 25. They want to know the measure of all those angles. So the first thing you need to recognize is that they are vertical angles, so they are equal. So that would be 5x equals 25. So x is 5, but that's great, but look, they want the measure of all these angles. So now let's go in and substitute. 2 times 5 plus 25 is 35, and just double check it over here. 35. So that means the measure of angle 4 is 35 degrees. The measure of angle 2 is 35 degrees. And now that you know those, you can find the measure of angle 3, because angle 4 and 3 form a linear pair. So this is 180 minus 35, and that is 145 degrees. And angle 1 is vertical to that, so it has to be 145 as well. Magic! Okay, and last on this page, we have AC is the diameter, so remember that splits the circle into 180 degrees. And the measure of AKB is 60 degrees, okay? And they want the measure of arc BC. So there's our arc that they want us to find. Hopefully you recognize that this is a straight line, so this angle right here has to be 180 minus 60, which is 120. So if the angle is 120, since it's a central angle, the arc is 120. So the measure of arc BC has to be 120 degrees. Okay? And 13, x, y, and z are non-collinear, so you should be thinking about possibly a triangle. So x, y, z. We know the distance from x to y is 23. The distance from x to z is 18. And we don't know the distance from y to z. Okay, so if you're drawing it, you would probably put a dotted line because we're unsure of it. So the question says, what are possible values of a? So we have to first make sure that we're in our range. So our range would be big minus the little number, and then you add them. So we have to pick a number that's between 5 and 41. So any number between 5 and 41. Okay, number 14, our lines are parallel. So right off the bat, we need to remember corresponding angles are equal. So 2y corresponds to 58. So 2y equals 58. Baby one step, y equals 29. And then 58 and 2x make a linear pair. So 58 plus 2x equals 180. And then it's a baby two-step. You should get x. And you want to make sure you answered the question. So we calculated the value of x and y. So yes, we answered the question. Okay, moving on to the last two. 15, look at the figure at the right. Based on the figure, which of the following must be true? So we know these indicate parallel lines. Okay, so what I would do is work through A, B, C, and D and see if they're true. Noticing that, remember, the figure is not drawn to scale. So they're going to try to say that F is the midpoint of segment AE. Do they tell us anything else about that? No, so that cannot be true. Then we know that they're telling us that segment AE is perpendicular, so think 90 degrees, to segment FC. Well, we know that this guy is 90, and remember we're parallel, so our corresponding angles are equal, so that guy is also 90. So this statement could be true. We also know that this over here corresponds to this angle, but we don't know if they have to be 90 because they don't tell us. Okay? And that brings us to segment FC. They're saying is perpendicular to DB. We don't know that, so we can't assume. And then they're telling us that segment AE is parallel to BD. We don't know anything else about that, so we don't know. Okay? And then in 16, based on the figure, which statement must be true? So I'm going to go out on a limb and tell us that it doesn't tell us anything is parallel. They don't come out and say that, so you can't assume. Okay? So these are corresponding angles, but since the lines aren't parallel, we can't assume that that's a right angle. We also can't assume that the lines are parallel. You can't assume that 2 is 3. The only thing we really know is that line M and line N intersect at point P. Okay, so that has been your review. Answer the questions, ask questions, do well.